So the topic this week is work smart, and it's kind of segueing into the conversation we've had before about the hustle, which I think was like the third one of these that I did. But I've had another, I don't know, insight, if you want to call it that, about this, and because some suggestions were made in terms of a topic, I thought, okay, this feels like it's time to sort of revisit some of this stuff. So thank you to Lydia, who's just joined, who mentioned, doing the hustle as a topic, and also to Ian, and Amber, who were also on here, who talked about a couple of other things which I felt were related to the same topic. So I thought, let me put them under one umbrella thingy called work smart. And the reason I think that this is different from the hustle conversation that we had previously is I had this insight, and I think it's to do with what working smart means. Because I was talking to a friend last night about Kevin Hart, and it's not about Kevin Hart, but Kevin Hart works incredibly hard all the time. Like, if you follow him on social media, you'll see that he's constantly on a plane somewhere, constantly gigging, he just really works hard, like, all the time. And his outlook is that you should be constantly working hard to get the things that you want to get, which is one way of doing it. I suspect that mentality comes, or can come, I'm not saying I know anything about his life particularly, but I think that can come from having a really difficult start in life, and it's almost like you are so intentional that how your life started will not define what your life becomes. It's oftentimes when people have come from really difficult circumstances, they go on to create the most amazing lives. In terms of like success and things like that, but there is a quality of, I don't want to say running away because I don't know his life, but that there is this sort of, it's almost like an addiction, a hunger, a chasing that I don't think applies to everybody. I don't think you have to work like that to get the things that you want, which is controversial because I know loads of people say, well, if you don't work hard, then you don't get, and blah, blah, blah. But I think that there's another way of working that is not just doing the bare minimum, that is not flogging yourself and trying to work 25 hours a day, but there's something, not even in the middle, but another domain called work smart, which is what I want to talk about today. Hey, Nick and Brooke. Is it Brooke? Brooke Ella? Welcome. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So and it's not, and I'm not saying like working very hard is, or constantly grinding or hustling or however you want to term it, is a bad thing. I'm just saying that there might be another way that doesn't involve that. And also, incidentally, I was like in a bookshop earlier today and I saw Kevin Hart's got an autobiography out, and I read the sort of the blurb on the back, and it did say that he's come from very difficult circumstances. I think his mother was a drug addict, his dad was a dealer and a thief, and all these different difficult circumstances that he grew up into. So in a way, it's kind of not surprising that he has this mentality of just transforming his situation into something else. And good on him. Like, you got to do what you got to do. But I would campaign more for the work smart outlook or approach rather than the flog yourself to death, because he also looks incredibly tired all the time. So there's that. But I want to make sure that you understand I'm not criticizing Kevin Hart. He's doing what he's got to do. Okay. So what is work smart? What am I talking about? Oh, and also I wanted to tell you about this extra feature as well that I'm adding to this thing, but I'll sort of come to that closer to the end, a bit later on. So the work smart thing for me is, rather than being in this constant grind and constantly working and flogging yourself kind of thing, it's about being finite and specific about what you want and how long it's going to take you to do it, basically. So with the constantly hustling mentality, I think that can be a bit daunting for people, because it's almost like, A, you don't know where to start, B, you don't know where it's going to end. Is that going to be my life now of constantly grinding? Or what if I constantly grind and hustle and don't get to the place that I want to get to? So better that I don't start. And so I think that might, if you look at Kevin Hart, for example, and just think, my God, is that what it means to work hard? That's way too intimidating and too much for me. You won't start, because you're just like, I can't do that. I can't do what he does. He's juggling so many projects and so many things, and he's so busy. I'll just keep things as they are, because I know that that's manageable. I know I can do that. Whereas with working smart, by my definition, I believe that perhaps the solution is to have a specific goal for a specific time frame that you will achieve in a specific time frame, so that you know that it will come to an end. You know where it begins and you know where it ends, and you know exactly what it is and what it is for. That is what I think could be the other way, the other domain in which you could experience your relationship with your work. I'm just going to go back on your comments. Amber says, absolutely, smarter, not harder. And also, you know, if it's smarter, not harder, then it can become a joy, because you can then go, well, I know this bit's tough, but in a week's time or a month's time or however long your time frame is, I know it's going to be done. And if it works out, I'm going to have the thing that I said I'm going to have. So it can allow a little bit more joy into it, I think. Anyways, Rasmus says, most people in manual labour work incredibly hard. Restaurateurs work insanely hard. I do think success warrants really hard work, but results are also dependent on smart work, luck to some degree. Yeah, I mean, I'm not talking about physical graft here. I'm talking, and also people who are doing the jobs that you're talking about, it's their job to work hard. You know, they're not gonna get where they want to get to. Their job is to work hard. Basically, that's what they've been hired to do. If you're talking about restaurateurs, people who are running their own businesses, I think the same thing applies. I think it might be a belief that people have, that if you work hard all the time, you'll get what you get what you're after. I think there's a possibility that even in the restaurant business, that is an incredibly difficult business to work in. I know that, and I know the hours are very long and all the rest of it. But I think there is still a way, if one is willing to break open one's belief system, that there might be a way of working a little bit smarter. It doesn't mean, look, working smart doesn't preclude hard work. It just means it will be for a finite amount of time. And it doesn't mean that when you get to the end of that finite amount of time that you're not going to have to work hard again. But you can afford yourself a breather. You know, so rather than sort of pedal to the metal, is that what they say? Yeah, rather than having to work like that constantly all the time, what I'm saying is maybe even in the restaurant business or whatever your creative pursuit is, you can have a fixed amount of time where you're looking to achieve a specific thing. And that can apply to any business, not even just creative ones. I think that can apply across the board. So that's kind of what I'm... And yeah, luck comes into it to a degree in terms of success, but it depends how you're going to define your success. Achieving your goals could be your definition of success, and in which case you're working smart towards those goals will help you be successful by that definition. Amber says, just knew the right direction, but we're getting to that. And Rasmus says, £1 fine for mentioning Kevin Hart in the next 30 minutes. Well, if I need to mention Kevin Hart, I will. I'm not paying a fine for it because he's a useful example. Okay, so specific finite goal. Hey Rob, hey, nice to see you. So this is these creativity live chats that I've been doing every week. So I've just got started, and I'm talking about working smart and talking about how instead of feeling the need to grind and hustle all the time, to have a finite time frame for a specific goal. So for this to work, what do you need? I think you need 4 things. I think you need, obviously, a goal. And I would encourage you guys to have a think, just while this conversation is going, let it percolate inside of you what your goal might be. So you wanna have a goal. So for example, with me, it might be to finish this book. that has been, you know, a millstone around my neck for quite a long time. So have a goal of just something you want to achieve. I'm not talking about some big dream type thing that's going to take, because the dream is the sort of ultimate destination, I guess, and the goals are the incremental steps that you would take there. So you may have 10 goals for 1 year that all eventually will lead to the place that you want to get to. So pick one, pick whatever's next, what's immediately in front of you, even if it's, you know, I don't know, if you're writing a paper for school or something, or, you know, you want to increase your business turnover by 10% or whatever it may be. But just what is that goal, and what's the time frame for that thing to realistically that you can own for that thing to happen. I think those are the first two things that you need: the goal, obviously, and then what's the time frame in which you can own making this thing happen. The third thing you need is to make a stand for that. And what does that mean? Well, that means declaring that this will be so. Simple as that, basically. It's saying that this thing will happen no matter what. Because a lot of the time we set ourselves goals of things that we want, but it's very elastic in terms of our relationship with its completion. Like, this came up and this came up and I had to do this thing. And what happened was, and there's all these reasons, and they probably are legitimate, but when you make a stand for something, you turn it around on its head, and the circumstances are just rocks in the white water rafting river that you have to navigate, rather than, you know, things that your boat crashes into and you go, oh well, I tried, but, you know, them's the breaks. So you have to make a stand, and that part of it is really important. You have to really get what being a stand for yourself means. It means that no matter what, and probably a way to think of it is like, what's a good example? It's like, you know, if you've got a job where you have to be somewhere at a particular time, you have unconsciously made a stand for you being at work. You know, you don't go, well, I'll see. I'll see if I get there on Monday. Now, obviously, there are certain circumstances. That's not necessarily a concrete example, because there could be circumstances where, say, you were in an accident or you get sick or something like that. But my point is, you don't wake up on the Monday morning and go, I don't feel like it, and then don't go. You've made a stand and a commitment, basically. It's a commitment to yourself, essentially, a stand, saying that this will be so. And so that's the third thing that's needed for this to really work. Because if you have a goal and a time frame, there's nothing to hold you to account if you haven't made this stand for yourself. And then finally, you need a plan. Obviously, you need a plan. You need to say, what do I need to do to make this work? Who do I need to get involved? What resources do I need? You know, what, working backwards, what things need to take place for this thing to, you know what I mean? You know what a plan is. You know, all those things. And Tony Robbins says that if he has a meeting about something, he always comes away with at least the first step of an action plan. And so that's what you need as well. You need to have the meeting with yourself, or with whoever it is. If you're in a team, then you meet with your team. But you come away with at least the first step of action of what you're gonna do. Because if you don't have that, it is still a dream. It's still pie in the sky. That's when you start to make a commitment, is when you start to put a plan in place. And even better, when money gets involved, you know, or if you start to involve other people, that's when it really becomes a solid, real, living, breathing thing that can that can start to gain momentum. Let me just go back, because I think some people have joined the conversation. Paul, hello, welcome. Rasmus says body transformation. Lose weight, keep to diet, start training regime, goal achieved by 2 years. Like that. Exactly that, Rasmus. So body transformation. And I think that the goal has to be, or you are better served if the goal is specific. So rather than, so one little tweak I would make to yours is to lose a specific amount of weight, or to lose a specific amount of inches, probably better, because, like, you know, weight it changes throughout the day or whatever. Or that you're able to do a certain thing, be able to bench press a certain amount, or be able to participate in a sort of fun run or something like that, or a 6K fun run, or do you know what I mean? Like that type of thing. So as soon as there's some specificity, some numbers or some specifics to it, then you start to be able to be in the right domain. 2 years is a long time, so you might want to break that down into specifics to give yourself a bit of breathing space in between that. So you might want to make it like, okay, within 6 months I'm going to be able to do this, within 9 months this, within 12 months this. And then that means that at the end of that 6 months and 9 months and 12 months, you can give yourself a little breather before you step onto the next goal. So it's almost like mountaineering, you know, when you get to that plateau, but another base camp or whatever, you can get more supplies, you know, do whatever you need to before you take that next step onto the next level. So Steve says, you have been in my mind as I've been writing my MA dissertation these past few weeks. I mean your inspiring thoughts, not that my dissertation is about you. Okay, cool. Steve also says, making a stand. Yes, I made a stand that my dissertation will be submitted mid-August, and that has transformed my writing into that of intention and focus and drive. And that's exactly what I'm talking about, is like, rather than I'll finish it when I finish it, Steve's saying he's made a stand for himself that it will be so, it will exist in its completed form mid-August. And then you orientate all your circumstances around that. That's when, you know, for example, you might say to people, I can't socialise this particular evening because I've got to da-da-da. So like with my book, I've realised this for myself. And so I've gone, okay, working back, if I'm going to have this book finished by the end of July, which is what I've said to myself now, what do I need to do? And so I've realised I have to write 3 chapters a week. And so I've literally been through my diary and written on, you know, the days off or days where I have a later start at work, because we're still doing these nights, 1 chapter. And so I know, because now I know when I'm ahead of myself and I know when I'm behind myself. And so that I know when I have to make cuts in what I'm doing. Say I can't take any more commitments because 1 chapter must be today. Do you know what I mean? So that's how you start to orientate all your other commitments and situations and circumstances around the stand that you've made for yourself, which is your goal and your goal within a specific time frame. Ryan has joined us. Welcome, Ryan. Hello, Paul. Ryan says, I lost weight around 4 stone. I set a goal, but it takes a lot of work and planning. Exactly. And sometimes people are scared of that, because even the very act of really putting some logistical thought to the goal can be terrifying, because it's starting to become real. And remember last week we were talking about how the mind, we've talked about it probably every week, is how the mind is so geared towards keeping us safe and keeping things as they were, that even the very act of planning can be terrifying. But it has to be done. Now, you might not be the sort of person who responds to plans and wants to freestyle it a little bit. But fine, do that. But at least have the end goal in mind. At least have the end point of what you want to achieve and how long you're going to do it. Because otherwise, you might as well just carry on as you were. Like you're not in the realm of working smart by this definition. You know, I'm sure other people have their own definition of it, but I'm just sort of sharing the sort of thoughts that I've been sort of amassing over the last few weeks, basically, with you guys. And by the way, a lot of what I'm figuring out is because of the conversation. So do please keep your comments coming and stuff, and questions and all the rest of it, because that helps me tease out like what I really mean and whether it's actually really true. Because sometimes I think, oh, that's a thing, and then, you know, having talked it out, I realise, no, it's not. so it really is a conversation. I know you have to type it and I say it, but it really is a conversation. So Amber says, I feel that. Make concrete deadlines when putting together a goal. Absolutely. And even one thing that I have done before, I don't do it often, but every now and again, I will start with a big end point desire. It's not really a goal now, because I don't know if you can put actual action steps to it, but like a big desire. And I will backtrack every step of what needs to happen before. So to get to that point, what needs to happen before that? Okay, cool. So what needs to happen before that? All right, cool. Until I keep backtracking until I get to tomorrow. Does that make sense? Like I work further and further back until I'm like, what step do I need to take tomorrow? And that's really exciting, because what that does is it gives you a pathway to your dreams in a way that feels practical and real, rather than intimidating and nebulous and like fantasy land. And so it's good every now and again just to do that little exercise of like, what's your wildest dream for your life that you would really love to see come to fruition? Maybe not, maybe it's not a 1 year or 2 year thing, maybe it's a 5 or 10 year thing, but what is it? And now backtrack and find your way back to today and see, are you on the right path? You might find that, actually, the way I'm going, I'm not going to get there. I need to reorientate myself a little bit. Just maybe even 1 degree can set you on a completely different course. Steve says the other benefit of taking a stand is that it helps to navigate home life. Like my wife was complaining about my books being all over the house, but I countered by saying it will be gone by mid-August. There you go. And see, that leads me to another point that I'll come to later of enrolling people, if necessary, in your plan, so that it isn't just about you. And Ava DuVernay says, if your goal, your dreams don't involve other people, then it's not a big enough dream. So if other people can be involved, then you know you're on, or need to be involved even, then you know you're on the right track. Ellen has joined. Quincy has joined. Hello. Rasmus says, I'm not sure why, but don't be. It's all good. Amber says, for sure, it makes it unattainable. Rob gives me a thumbs up. Thank you. Paul says, I can get overwhelmed by subtasks associated with bigger projects. Being accountable to others definitely helps. Yeah, I mean, this is overwhelming. This whole thing can be, should I say, overwhelming. So my only advice I could say is just to be present to the fact that you might be predisposed towards overwhelmedness, if that makes sense, so that you can give it a little bit of breathing room, that you know that is who you know yourself to be. So you're not squashing it like it doesn't have permission to exist, but that you just give it a little bit of space, a little bit of a bigger context in which to exist, and then get on with what needs to be gotten on with. I was reading, let's see, what is it called? The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I wanted to get the title right. And he was pointing out this, he calls it the sort of feedback loop of hell, where you get angry about something, say for example, and then you get angry that you're angry because you're like, oh, I shouldn't be angry, and you get angry about that. Or you feel guilty about something, and then you feel guilty that you're feeling guilty because you shouldn't feel guilty because it's getting in the way of you getting things, and you just end up in this ridiculous, like I've noticed sometimes when I'm sad that I feel sad about the fact that I'm sad. I feel sorry for myself, so it brings up more sadness. So what you don't want to get is overwhelmed. What you don't want to get is let me put it another way. You want to give yourself a break for being overwhelmed, because otherwise overwhelm will start to become another thing on the pile of things that you have to do, and therefore will overwhelm you. So just cut yourself a break is what I'm basically saying. Hey, Tommy. Hi, Michael Nyan. So, all right. So like I said, have a think about what your goal might be if you were to set yourself a goal. Even if it's it doesn't have to take months. It could be something, right, by the end of this week, I want to have done. And that'll give you a taste of what it feels like to have achieved a goal in this way, in this work smart kind of way. Making a stand, having a finite time limit, and making a plan for it. So just let that percolate, like I say, and just have a think about what that could be. Now, what elements need to be in place to make this happen? Well, one of the things I think is discipline. We talked about discipline before, so you might maybe just watch that whole, or cherry pick the bits that you wanted from that talk. But we talked about discipline. It's absolutely essential, because once you've made your plan, what you've got to do, the stand that you've made for yourself is where the discipline will come from. And they cradle with each other, because if you make a stand for yourself, the only way that you're really going to be able to honor that stand and uphold it is by having discipline. For example, using my book as an example, working out, I've committed to working out 3 times a week. I've said that must be so. And so even on the days when I really don't feel like it, because I've said this will be so, it just has to be. There's no excuses. Unless there was one time when I got sick, so I was thinking that's counterintuitive to be working out during that time. But otherwise, even if I'm tired, like I was with my personal trainer on Friday night, 8 o'clock Friday night, and I was fighting to stay awake to go to see her. But I had said, well, first of all, I've committed because I've paid and the session's booked, but also I could have cancelled it, but I thought, no, you have said that this will be so. And this is too silly an excuse not to go. I'm tired. That doesn't work. Like, you have to have a really good excuse to not go. So I went, and so so that's what I'm talking about in terms of discipline. You've just got to make the stand be real. This will be so. That's it. Rigor. That you really sort of just make sure that your plan is robust, that you get specific about things, because, you know, one of the things that people don't do is they're not rigorous. They're not disciplined and intentional. And there's no judgment, and I'm not saying like, and therefore everyone's bad. It's just the way it is. We let ourselves off the hook quite a lot. Now, one of the keys to working smart, I would say, is that you can't do that. You can't let yourself off the hook. You can't make excuses. Just for this, all your commitment is for this amount of time. So when you pick this amount of time, make it an amount of time where you can commit not only to the goal, but also to being disciplined, to being rigorous, and to having edge. That's the other thing I think as well, is that you're bringing a certain sharpness and an edge to your life that previously you may not have had. I feel like there's certain things where I think I have edge, but actually prior to me experimenting with this whole working smart thing, I was still basically referencing off how I felt before I chose to do or not do something. And that included work, obviously. Like, I'm talking about, do I want to write today? I don't feel like it. The only time I would ever like feel like it is if I had an external deadline. Like if I was writing for a production company and said they want the draft by blah blah blah, then I would get my shit together. But otherwise I'd be like, I think I'm gonna go for a walk, and I think I'm gonna do this and that, and I would get a lot achieved, but there wasn't an edge to it. Now with this work smart thing, talking about bringing a sharpness and an intentionality to what you're doing so that the thing can be done by the time that you said. Now, if you want within that to have rest and breaks and not feel so flogged, as it were, then factor that in, but do that in the planning stage. Do that. Don't start to go, oh, I don't feel like it anymore. I need a rest. Da, da, da. Anticipate that stuff. And then only with exceptional circumstances do you start to sort of change the plan. It's not that the plan can never change, but you've got to have a good reason other than I don't feel like it. So there may be a point halfway through. Say if yours is a really long, like 2-year thingy or something, there may be a point halfway through where you're like, I've got to reevaluate this. But do it with an integrity. Do it with an intention of like, I'm doing this to come up with a new plan. I'm not shirking on the one that I already made, if that makes sense. Okay, let me go. Sorry, I had a bit of a train of thought, so let me see your comments. Okay, Steve says, as you said before, if your focus is on being overwhelmed, then that's where your energies will focus. Yeah, and to be fair, you know, these emotions, they overtake us all. Now, in Paul's case, it might be overwhelmed. In somebody else's case, it's frustration. In somebody else's case, in my case, I get a sense of, what more do you want from me? You know, so I sometimes get a bit like, I suppose it's overwhelmed actually. I think I might be in the overwhelmed camp, in the sense of like, I've done everything you've asked of me. Why? And it has got a bit of a whiny quality to it. It's like, what else do you want from me? I've done everything. And that can pile up on top of me. So I think we've all got our own version of it. Yes, we have to give ourselves space and just go, that's just me meing, and then get on with the task at hand. CD Lifestyle, hello. You're going to be back as soon as you get your Wi-Fi. Also, Michael says, just discovered these live videos and have been catching up on your YouTube page. Absolutely love them. Oh, thank you so much. That's really lovely. Tommy says, only 3. Are you busy or something? Ha ha. Ha ha. Steve says, have you considered that the struggles you are having with the book is because it's not meant to be? Yeah, totally. Oh, yes. 100%. But I have reorganize my plan, my work smart plan, to allow it to be, and or give it the space to be. So I don't feel like it's dead yet, but I'm always open to the possibility of whatever I'm doing not working out. But I carry on regardless, unless I genuinely feel like 100% this is not meant to be. Sometimes you feel it in your spirit, do you know what I mean? Like in your gut, like this project isn't meant to be. It may not be its time, or it may not be that it was ever meant to be. But I feel like I can feel that in me. I don't know if I'm judging the experience correctly, but I don't feel that about this book, so I'm sort of pressing on with it. Tommy says, oh, I look amazing, thanks. Carly, hello. Tommy says, I want to do that, but that word is as bad as the Americans using like the wrong way. Yeah, I think, are you talking about when people say they want to do something, but then they have a load of excuses as to why not? I mean, the thing is with that is, cool, maybe it's not your time, and all those excuses might be, I think procrastination is sometimes is sometimes a good thing, or a tool to allow us to start a process at the right time. I don't think all procrastination is bad. I think that sometimes we put things off because we're not ready. We're actually not in our beings ready for them, and therefore the procrastination is serving us. It's actually helping us. It's painful because we beat ourselves up because we don't want to be procrastinating, but ultimately I think that if you are coming up with excuses, then it's not your time. Because it will be your time when it's your time. When you start, it's your time. But you might need a little nudge and encouragement to say, jump afraid, or jump when you're not ready, or whatever that may be. Because it may be your time and you just don't know it. So it's hard, isn't it? You can't necessarily tell. So the only way you can tell is that if you start, then that was your time. Amber says, I've been working on being specific in my planning, breaking things down so that it doesn't seem so big. Absolutely. That's one of the great things about breaking down a dream or a desire down into achievable goals, is it doesn't seem so intimidating. Even just from the very basic, like thinking about writing a book. If you say to someone, write a book, it would be overwhelmingly intimidating. But if you say, I want you to just write me 5 pages, a chapter, then someone can go, okay, I think I could do that. And then you put it in time. You say, I want it by the end of the week. Okay, cool, I can do that. Right, that means I have to. And then you orientate your goals, or orientate your life around that specific goal. Amber says, recently, after a real crap health thing, sorry to hear that, Amber, I hope you're doing better, I've had to reevaluate a goal of this short film. But instead of throwing it away, I've been changing it so that it could happen. That's the other thing. That's the other amazing thing. Sometimes it's possible to just change the goal to make it more achievable, and maybe even in the time frame that you originally thought. Again, using the book as an example, I realized that I had too much story in it. I had too many story beats that I was trying to hit, and so it was making it this really difficult thing to write, because I had to write all of this stuff. All of these things had to happen, and they had to be really well written, because it's the book. It's not like a script. You can't sort of, do you know what I mean? There's only so many words in a script, but in a book, there's just a fuckload more, basically. So I pared down the story so that I can investigate character more and write, but still write less. So that is another way of being able to make something achievable, is scaling down on what it is. I would venture to say that probably all projects that's done to, they're better off for it. Because less is more, you know, is a saying. It's not just a trite saying. I think it's probably true. Less is more. So probably, you know, in some way, you've probably done what the project needed to have done to it anyway by paring it down like that. Johan says, I think it's easier to reach a goal if you imagine how it feels in your body when you reach the goal. Yeah, I mean, that's a classic law of attraction, isn't it? It's like, you know, if you, I can't remember what the saying is, but basically, yeah, your body doesn't know the difference between imagined and real. So if you give yourself an imagined experience of what it feels like as a visualization, not as a fantasy, I haven't got time to make the distinction, but I'm sure you know what I mean. If you feel it as a physical thing in your body, then your being is almost preparing you to receive it in the material world. Amber says, I was trying to push my old plan so hard, I was actually making myself sicker. No good. So I hope that you found a way to make the film that you want to make work. Marchand, hello. Ryan says, if you want something that bad and set a goal for it, keep going no matter how hard or the obstacles in the way. Absolutely. And he also says, prepare for the hurdles that may hinder your goal. It makes success even more sweeter when it is reached. And Steve says, oh, I see. So agree with the excuses, not your time approach. Said the same thing to some people this morning about a commitment they could make. Oh, I so agree with the excuses equals not your time approach. Oh, okay, cool. Good times. All right, so specifically onto Lydia's point. Now, she was asking about the hustle. And again, like I say, there is a whole video about this, but it's just some extra issues or things that I want to just add to that. In terms of hustle, I think that working smart encapsulates hustle. It also encapsulates hard work. I think one of the important things with hustling, as it were, is to be incredibly resourceful and to really be honest with yourself about the resources that you have to hand. Because a lot of times people complain about the fact that they don't have what they need to do the thing that they want to do, whatever it may be. But actually what they're lacking is not resources, but resourcefulness. That is a Tony Robbins thing. So I think one of the things is to get really resourceful, to have an intention that what you want is going to happen by any means, within your own integrity. So not that you're going to screw people over or anything like that, but that you will do whatever it takes to make this thing happen without compromising yourself or your life in a negative way. So there may be compromises, right? Like Steve's saying, you know, his books for his study are all over his, you know, where he lives, and this is a problem for his wife, but it's not going to be a negative compromise because he's said that there's an end date to it. And if he's enrolled her in that idea, then it's all good. Now, if his situation, hypothetically, if it was going on for years and years and it was a problem for her, then there would be a negative compromise, and that would be something that would need to be looked at. But otherwise, by any means necessary, if the books need to be everywhere to be able to make this paper work, then that's what just has to happen. And that's like a small example. Whatever, you know, whatever your example in your hustle is, then make it so. If you really want this thing, you've got to do whatever. I don't understand why you wouldn't do whatever's necessary. Why are you operating and functioning within yourself if it's something that you want that's outside of yourself? You have to push through any fears that you may have. You know, one of the things that hustling means is asking for things, and you have to find a way to be able to get what you want. And again, with inside of your own integrity, be able to get what you want. Enroll people in your dreams and ideas. Ask for things that are a bit cheeky and a bit like my personal trainer wants to. She's going to. She's going to go and work in the States. And she wrote to this huge like basketball team and said, do you need a physiotherapist? Like, I just want to come and do some work experience. Why not ask? Do you know what I mean? Why not? All the worst that they can do is either not reply or say no. You know, why not make those bodacious, bold, cocky steps and just go, do you know what? I'm good enough. Why not? Why not ask? And then also be incredibly creative, not in terms of what you're creating, but in terms of how you go about realizing your creativity. Be creative with that. Find other ways in. There was a time when I was doing stand-up in the States where I was just like, how could the stand-up scene is very tough in LA, because obviously there's loads of people. There's loads of people doing stand-up. So I was like, what's another way in? So I started going to storytelling nights and writing stories, you know. So it's by any means. I mean, I remember Leslie Jones, who's the woman, the black woman from, she was in Ghostbusters, she's an SNL regular, she's done all kinds of things, and she's a stand-up as well. And she's like she has done she's tried every angle to get in. You know, she's been at it a long time. And that's what you do. When you know that you want to get somewhere, you try you're like the velociraptors in, you know, in Jurassic Park. You keep testing the fence for weaknesses until you find a way in. And if you want it, you will keep going. You will keep testing the parameters until you find your way in. If you don't, you'll give up. There's a fence, and you'll turn back. And that's cool, because that means it wasn't your time. It wasn't meant for you, or whatever. So then Ian asks, I'm going to come to your comments, but just a sec. So Ian asks, he goes, what about getting your work out there? Again, I can't give any sort of advice about specific industries or disciplines or anything like that, because I don't know. So all I'm going to say is this: getting your work out there, get creative again, find your weakness in the fence where you can get into the industry and get your work in front of the right people. Create your own opportunities always. There's so many platforms online now where people of all sorts of disciplines can put their work out. Not just YouTube, if you write, there's like Wattpad or something like that. It's like, you can write fan fiction stories, or you can post novels. If you're a painter, obviously, any visual medium, Instagram, comedians make Instagram, so there's no real excuse for not having it out there somewhere, unless you've got some fears going on about getting your shit out there, then in which case you've got to get over yourself. Because you will get told no, you will get rejected, you will get people telling you your work is shit. So you might as well get that out of the way, get the fear of that happening out of the way, should I say. It's not necessarily given that it will happen, but you get that out of the way, get over yourself and get your stuff out there. By whichever way you need to do it. And start collecting those rejection slips, you know what I mean? Start having them as a badge of honour, because look how many U2 got, and J.K. Rowling got, and all those people that we consider to be great and they've made huge artistic contributions. They didn't just land in success, they got told no hundreds of times, thousands of times, some people. And it's not just, remember back in the day, now we can email stuff, we can email our music, we can email our books to people. Back in the day, somebody would have had to type out their book and sent it, or recorded and copied cassettes and sent them out to record labels. So we're, at least we're in this glorious position where we can just ping out an email to 1,000 people in one go if we want to. It's not advisable, because they'll know that you've just BCC'd them with your work, so they won't appreciate it. But you know what I'm saying. And then finally, I just want to get onto Amber's point about networking, and then I'll come back to your comments. So Amber brought up the point of networking. Well, first of all, let's talk about what is networking. Networking is really... I think what people's perception of it is getting, making contacts within the industry that will advance one's career. I don't think that's strictly what networking is. I think networking is making contacts there. That's the end of the sentence. Now, if you think of it more like that, rather than people advancing your career, then networking is very easy, because all it is getting to know people. And you never know who's going to make that big difference in your career. There's no point, I say, trying to get big, big FaceTime opportunities with people. Say, for example, you're a filmmaker. FaceTime with Steven Spielberg probably isn't going to make any difference to your career at the point that you're at. You want to be gravitating in his circle, really, before meeting him. Won't just be a weird fanboy or fangirl experience. You need to look closer to home, because they're the people that you're going to grow up with, as it were, in your industry. Issa Rae says, network laterally. Get to know the people around you. Because if I want to make a film, Steven Spielberg's not going to help me make a film, is he? Like, it's going to be my mates who's going to hold a boom pole for me, or, introduce me to a cameraman, or do you know what I mean? That's how you get your shit done, rather than thinking, oh, if I can only get to that person, that'll change everything. The people whose lives are changed by those interactions are already in the orbit of people like that. These things don't happen by chance. And, an example is Will Smith's story about how he got Fresh Prince. He wasn't just walking down the street and it just happened to happen. He'd had his hits with, the Fresh Prince, Summertime and Girls of the World and all those sorts of things. And he was moving in those circles. He was broke as, but someone advised him to go to the Arsenio Hall show, where he met Quincy Jones and was introduced to the head of the network. And things started to happen from there. But it wasn't like he was in a completely outside of the industry. He'd already started to make ructions and people knew who he was. So don't worry about trying to get to those top people. Remember who's around you. Be of service as well. Like, don't be thinking, what can I get from that person? Think, what can I offer them? How can I be of service to them? And maybe that, if you have that be the tone of your encounter with them, maybe they'll remember you more. And also remember that you have to show up in someone's space 6 or 7 times before they really remember you. So sometimes, you know, I've spoken about this before, where I've been to like Q&As, and at the end, you know, you see all these actors or whoever's in the audience like rush the stage and start trying to hand over business cards and CVs and all the rest of it. It's like, unless you know that person, you're just a fan, really. There's no two ways about it. But if you have met them a few times and they start to recognize your face, then they'll break away from the crowd and have a little chat with you. But you need to cultivate that relationship. So do you spend your time cultivating that relationship, or do you network laterally? You know, and get to know the people around you. You look at Judd Apatow, stuff like that. He's working with people he grew up with. Obviously, he's also networking up now because he's of that ilk. But I think people underestimate the importance of their social network in terms of their creative life, who is also doing what they're doing at their level. I think that's where your opportunities come from, rather than thinking that, you know, you're Steven Spielberg or whatever, or head of Penguin or whatever is going to publish your book. Get to know people at your level. That's what I'm saying. And also manage your expectations about what's going to come out of this networking. I think that's a really important part of networking as well. It's just like, really, a business card and an opportunity to contact that person is really all you should be looking for. But I've seen people, I've done it myself. What am I talking about? Trying to hand over scripts and books and cassettes and da-da-da. It's just like, how many times a day do you think that person gets that? Be different. Be realistic about like what you can get from that person, or what you can give that person. So, Steve says resources. Oh, right. Ryan says you don't get shit unless you ask. Well, sometimes you do. Sometimes people just give you stuff. But anyways, no, you're right. You generally do need to ask for stuff. Oh my gosh, what have I just done? Okay. Resources versus resourcefulness. Worth looking up how Robert Rodriguez made his first movie with Scare. He had like $6,000 or something like that. He also recorded dialogue separately because he could not afford the time to set up audio on location. Wow. Tommy says, yes, it is. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but Steve says, and from that, he became a successful director, making his own movies, running his own studio. Yeah, it's true. Tommy says, or climb the fence. Absolutely. Johan gives us a thumbs up. Or Tommy says, get you on a podcast. Hold a black, welcome. Ian says, the reason for the question was I came to writing more by accident than design. I never really had a plan. It just happened. Okay. Well, I mean, I think what I said still stands. It's kind of like, yeah, there's a multitude of ways for you to approach it. It's kind of, you just have to crack on. And by the way, what I was saying wasn't specifically to you. It was just out. So you may already have been doing those things. I hope you don't think I'm just going, Ian, just pull your finger out and get on with it. That's not what I was really getting at. Holder Black says, hello. Tommy says, networking is PR. Yeah, I mean, it can be, you know, your way of representing yourself in a particular way to the industry. Amber says, yes, I'm in school now getting to know some amazing filmmakers, mostly actors, but they have other talents. Exactly what I'm talking about. And you find a lot of like people that go to drama school, film school, they create their own little support structure for each other. Steve says, I like the people in your gravitational orbit analogy. Okay, cool. How can I be of service? Steve likes that. Tommy says, good point. Know the people around you. And Amber says, that's why I don't jump in there. It's weird. I very much am more interested in meeting other hungry folks. Yes, and hungry folks will work together to create, basically. Steve says he won't be handing over a copy of anything if we ever meet. And Marshawn says, I tell people it's called networking, not using. Thank you. You must bring value to the other person, not just about talking. Yeah, because you often see in networking interactions, people just talking at the person. You know, it's almost like that GIF, you know, that basketball GIF where the guy's like in the other guy's face. And that's kind of what the other guy's kind of like that, like, okay. And that's kind of what networking interactions can be like, especially when you feel like it's all or nothing in this one encounter. And it isn't. It totally isn't. All right. Done it again. I've got 7 minutes left, so let me just crack on. All right. So one other thing with working smart is I wanted to say track your progress. Very quick story. So I went to this kind of workshop that was being run at my yoga studio I was going to, and the guy said at the end of it, you know, any questions or whatever, and I was like, yes. I feel like I'm not getting anywhere with my career, and he said, I'm condensing the whole story, but basically he said, just track your progress. And so what I did is I created this kind of grid, days of the week along the top, and down the side were all the criteria that were important to me. So like opportunities, health, keeping fit, you know, whatever they were. And I graded the colour, gave a colour grade for how good the day was based on that criteria. So if I'd worked out that day, I might give myself, you know, blue star, or if I hadn't, I'd give black star, or whatever, you know, however, I can't remember how I defined it. But what was great about that was that I could, over the course of a month, suddenly look at that and go, oh, I have had loads of opportunities. I have earned money. Things have changed. But because before I was referencing on how I felt in that moment, and if I didn't feel successful, I'd be like, nothing's working out. But now I had evidence that I couldn't refute to show me that I was progressing. And I did it for like 3 months, literally every single day. I would fill out a little block and just go, okay, pink star today because you did okay, sort of thing, or whatever. And after 3 months, I stopped doing it because I said to myself, you can now see that you are progressing. You don't need to continue to do this, because the story of I am not progressing is just one that I made up in my own head, and now I've got the evidence to prove it. So track what you're doing. As I said earlier to Steve, involve other people. So that just brings more power and energy to what you're going to do, and it also allows other people to be a stand for you. One thing you might want to do is have an accountability buddy. That's your call if that's what you want to do, but that's another way of making sure that what you want to achieve can be made real. And also, I'm just sort of trying to figure out how I can fit everything in that I want to say. And finally, so the final thing that I want to say just on this bit is that these goals that you're going for, they might not actually be your ultimate North Star. You know, they might not actually be the place that you're meant to be. Well, what they do is they are preparing you for your North Star. So what you will be is prepared for when that opportunity comes your way. You know the saying that, you know, luck is preparation meets opportunity. So these goals might not be about achieving those goals. They might be about having you be in a state of readiness for when the opportunity that is meant to be yours comes your way. Because I've been in positions where I haven't been ready, and I have been in positions where I have been ready. And where I haven't been ready, I lost a job because it was basically an improv TV show. And I said, yeah, I can improv. And I realized it was a particular skill that I do not have. So I lost the job. But then I've had other situations like Live at the Apollo where I've been honing my craft as a stand-up, and particularly honing the routine, so that when the call came, I was ready. So, but it's not like I ever set a goal of I want to be on Live at the Apollo, but I had done so much preparation in all the other ways that I actually was ready. Okay, so this is what I want to get to. This was the extra little thing that I wanted to add. So I've got a bit of time to talk about this now. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm sort of encouraging you to have a think about goals and timeframes that you might want to embark on. Now, this is not a you must do this, or this is a mandatory part of this in any way. But I just thought of the other day of how can I bring a little bit of edge for you in terms of what you get out of these conversations, because we're talking in general terms at the moment, because nothing is specific or set in stone, or nobody's committed to anything, and I'm not asking you to commit to anything at all. Merely I wanted to extend an invitation, and I want to do it at the end of every session, and every invitation will be different. Now, an invitation is an opportunity for you to take something on if you choose to, and I am completely cool with you choosing not to, or you going, yeah, go on, I'll give it a go, or you giving it a go and then realizing actually I didn't want to. It's just an invitation. It's like being asked to a party. There's no obligation, even if you accept an invitation, to go. So I just want to sort of give that context before I extend the invitation. So what I want to do is have these comments at the end of the session almost be like this altar onto which you can place something. Now it might be, sometimes it might be about negative beliefs, it might be about something else, it might be about goals or whatever. But every week I want us to feel like we can, if we want to, place something on the altar and sort of commend it to the universe and see where that leaves us in the following weeks. And this week I wanted to extend the invitation that if anyone wants to put what their goal is and their time frame, because that's why I mentioned it at the beginning, to have a think about what that might be, to put it in the comments, that we can all be a stand for you or help you reach that intention. Now, you don't have to, but it's just an invitation. I'm going to start. I'm not going to type it because otherwise it's kind of hard because the iPad is upright. And by the way, I've got the countdown. So you got to be fast. You got literally like 1 minute and 45. But I'm going to start. So my one is going to be to complete my book, to complete a first draft of the book by the end of July. There, I said it. Don't feel like, and also don't feel like you have to put anything as well, because sometimes it isn't the right time to put anything, because you need to remember, I was saying about sometimes it's important to keep things to yourself, and something needs to sort of amass momentum and energy. So don't feel any pressure to put anything. But Steve says I will have written up to and including chapter 5 by the time we all meet next week. Up to chapter 5 by next week. That's perfect. So there's a specific goal, up to chapter 5, and it's in time. It's by next week. Amber says, I very much enjoy these charts. Love them more live. Oh, chats, I think. Tommy's going to hold me to it. So he's going to be my stand for the book being finished by the end of July. So Amber is going to complete the first draft of her play by the end of August. All right, so we're all going to be a stand for Amber completing the first draft of her play by the end of August. Now, for those of us that have put our intention here, our goal, we need to, once we come off here, make a plan of action. We need to have the first step in the plan of action. Okay, listen, I've got 6 seconds, so I'm going to come back on. I'm going to end this and then come back on. As always, this won't be long. It'll be like, 5 minutes or whatever. But yes, I just also, just want to give a little bit of space if anybody else wants to throw anything on the altar there. So, classic end of lesson rush. Schoolgirl error, school teacher error even. So we've got Amber, who is going to be doing her first draft of her play by August. Do you know what? I'm going to write these down. Amber, first draft of play by August. And we had Steve, who's going to have up to 5 chapters by Sunday the 20th. And who else is it? Oh, there's me. I've got book, first draft by end of July, and Tommy is my stand. Steve says you like the accountability thing. Yeah, I think it's I mean, it's actually kind of a bit of a marriage, finding the right person to be your sort of accountability person. But once you do, it's brilliant because you hold each other to account. Marshawn is also my stand. I'm going to write that down. Okay, so before I sign off, is there anybody else that wants to offer anything, any goal that they want to put onto the kind of altar of intentions, or I don't know, whatever we should call it. And also, by the way, you don't have to. It's perfectly okay not to. It may not be your time. I may come back to this next week, because what I wanted to do is have a different one every week, but actually it may be that I will have a plan in place by next week as to my intention. So are you is that a comic one, or are you meaning that, Ian? So you have a plan as to what your intention is. You intend to intend. Ellen is back. Amber is back. Oathbound series is back. Yes, so I'll let Steve said introduce it at the beginning so that people are ready by the end. Yeah, that's I planted the seed at the beginning, but I had to sort of all right. So Ian's gonna have a plan by next week. So what I'm gonna do, if you're on the chat, obviously it doesn't matter if you're not, but if you're on the chat, I will just check in with you and see how things are going. So that might be how I just start things off. No, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just check in and just see, look, how's it going? Do you need anything from us or whatever? Yeah? Great. Okay, so Ian says he needs to look and see who he has to send the screenplay to. Ellen says she feels like her plan is too fuzzy. Don't worry about that. A plan is not necessarily about having to do every little bit on it. A plan is a means to an end. So if your plan has to change, just get the first step of what you need to do down, and then maybe the rest will become clear. When you're driving on a dark road, like a country road, and you've got your headlights on, you can only see about 20 meters ahead. You can't see home. But you drive and you keep driving and you keep driving, and every 20 meters you go forward, it reveals 20 meters more. So think more like that about your plan, rather than you should have it all down necessarily, or that it's not right unless you get it all down. Amber's making her plan now. Yes, I'll check in at the start, Steve. 5-minute check-in and then topic of the week. Absolutely, that is exactly the plan. All right, guys, I think we're done. So we've got Ian, Ellen. Do you want until next week to make a plan? Do you reckon? Because maybe you just need a little bit of space, rather than feeling like. And actually, by the way, Ellen, all that you need to do now is make the commitment to the time frame and the goal, if you wanted to put that on the thing. So you could do that now, or your intention could be by next week I'll have goal, time frame, and plan. Which would you prefer to do? And by the way, either is fine. Steve says, nice job. Good one. This is excellent. Intentionality is the next step. Maybe that's the next topic. Soar. Ellen says soar, and I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure. Trying to figure. All right, why don't you make it next week? You can make your figure it out for next week. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, look, I think that's it. That was all yes, see you next week, Ian. Good night. I think that's it for this week. I just wanted to sort of properly wrap things up, rather than blah, 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 which is always what I feel like I'm doing at the end of these things. Paul, lovely to have you here as always. Ellen, Amber, Ian, take care. Marshawn, thank you for being here. Steve, as always, thank you for being here. And I will see you all next week. All right, lots of love. Bye-bye.